Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a houseplant tour in my eat-in kitchen as well as my great room. And I've got a lot of plants to go through, so if you're interested, stay tuned and I'll go through that right now. The first plant I want to talk about is this Peacock Calathea. This is one of my favorite Calathea. Keep this one under a lamp. So I always have a lamp near it, almost 24 hours a day, and it really likes that. I'm definitely going to be propagating this one in the future, maybe next year. We'll see how it grows this summer. Maybe next year, and get more of them to put in my other areas of my house. It's just an absolutely beautiful plant. I have 3 of these. This is a black velvet Anthurium, and I bought 1 container with 4 little pieces in it last year, and I broke them apart. I gave one away, and this is one of my smaller ones. You can see I've got a new leaf coming here too. You'll see one on, as we continue the tour today, you'll see I have it on a different shelf as well. I find the black velvet Anthuriums are very easy to look after. One of the things that I do is when I see that it's got spider mites on it, which we've got a little bit of yellowing on one of these leaves, and I'll do some B-roll so you can see it. What I do is I simply spray some rubbing alcohol on it, and it tends to keep the spider mites in check, which is really nice. I've got a new leaf coming on this one, and yeah, for me it's a very robust plant. I've had good luck keeping this right in a direct west facing window, and the direct sun hasn't seemed to hurt them at all. I had seen many people with these the Philodendron Brasil, and I think that the color pattern on the leaves is just amazing. So I bought one at a big box store last summer, and it was just little bitty cuttings. I should have waited for a bigger plant. And so it's taken it almost 8 months to get this much growth on it, which is kind of disappointing. I think I will start fertilizing it here as we get into spring and summer, and maybe it will take off now that the roots are a little bit more established. I just recently installed this moss pole, and for me the moss pole is more decorative and to hold it up than it is to feed the plant. And I like my moss poles to be green if I can get that, because I think it blends in with the foliage better versus the moss poles that are actual sphagnum and they start to turn brown, which I don't like that so much. As I get into some more exotic plants, I will probably use those as well. But for right now, I like the green aesthetic. You know, do you like this, the dark green? Let me know what you think. I like it this way. Philodendron Brasil. So this is a newer Dracaena. This is a Dracaena Surculosa, and I'll document the name hopefully in all of these in the video. This is newer for me. I've only had this for about 30 days, and I just absolutely love it. I'll do some B-roll so you can see just how spectacular the variegation on the leaves. It looks tropical, as if you were in the rainforest, what you would see. It looks very much alive. And I have moved it from a shelf just recently into this location, and I'm going to make it into a floor plant. And the spectacular leaves on it, and I think it would look really good if I had a black light or a blue light shining on it. It would probably make it glow a little bit too. But anyway, Dracaena Surculosa. This plant you've seen on, if you've been on any of my other houseplant tours, you've seen this plant or another one. I've got several of them. This is a Schefflera, standard variegated Schefflera. And to me, as I've stated in my other videos, if you've watched them, this is not a Schefflera. This is a Grandma Cleo plant. When I was a child, my grandmother, Grandma Cleo, had tons of houseplants. She had a 4-season porch and it was full. And I always thought that was a magical place. I always tried to play out there. She didn't like us out there, but I loved going out there. And she had a absolutely massive Schefflera in her living room. And it meant Grandma Cleo. So for me, that is, something from my childhood, and it always makes me smile fondly. I've sent pictures of my houseplant collections to some of my aunts, and I said, what does this remind you of? They said Cleo. So yeah, it's a great plant. And if you're a beginner, that is like one of the easiest plants to grow. It looks somewhat exotic, and it's just fun to grow. Down in the south of the United States anyway, I see them as landscape plants, but up here in the north country, they have to be house plants. So again, standard Schefflera variegated. This box has my bird nest fern, and I have two bird nest ferns. This is the larger one. I have a smaller one in my loft tour. If you haven't seen that video, you might want to check that out. And this one I bought a little bit bigger, but it's doubled in size. I've had it since last summer, so 8 months. I've had at least 8 months. I'm in the dead of winter now. And it's done wonderful. It loves this room. This room has a west-facing window, and it gets quite bright light. And I have a shade that I pull down, but it's got filtered bright light for, several hours in the afternoon, especially in the summer. And it's done quite well. I've had it underneath not sitting in the window, but underneath the window, where it's had really direct light within 1 foot, and it didn't seem to bother it at all. I was surprised. This plant can take quite a bit of abuse, I think. Again, it's a bird nest fern. The final plant I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to call this section 1 of the video. I have so many sections I'm going to do, but this is section 1. This is just a plain old golden pothos. I have many cuttings around my house. This is the largest one. I believe this was probably the mother plant that I propagated, and made several cuttings, and then I've had it growing up a smaller moss pole, and I most recently changed it over to this moss pole, which is kind of nice because it's got a post in it, and they're nesting, which is, it's just really simple. I'll link this pole in the description, but again, this is a green moss pole. It's dried moss. It's like sheet moss, but it's dried, and I just prefer to have my moss poles be green, what you've seen in the other one. And I'm probably going to get some extensions. I'll probably buy some more. And my goal is to get it to go all the way up to the ceiling. And maybe in the future, you can see some of these leaves are getting bigger and bigger. The higher the pothos grows up on the pole, the larger the leaves will get below. And I just recently transplanted this, so the leaves may not be in their original location. They're getting quite big. Some of the leaves are almost the size of my hand. I've had this plant, the original plant, I got as a Mother's Day gift from my daughter, one of my daughters, and I've been propagating it like crazy. So I know some of you watching have contacted me about growing golden pothos or having issues with what they call the devil's ivy, I think, or something like that. And so this room that I have this in, I have never had this directly in the window. This is about 12 feet from a west-facing window, and it loves it here. I have grown pothos in different areas of my house where it hasn't liked it as much. If it gets too much sun, it's not going to like it. So this is a filtered window. This wall is about 12 feet, maybe 14, 12 feet from a west-facing window, which in the heat of the summer, I always have the shade drawn. In the winter, I might not have it. So during the day, it does get some direct sun, but very little. The way that the sun comes around in angles, it doesn't really hit, especially 12 feet from the main window. So this is section 1 of this tour. I gotta change the camera on and we'll go through section 2. So this is section 2 of my great room. It's my fireplace area, and just over the weekend we started decorating for Easter. Brought in some nice rabbits. We got these at Burlington Coat Factory 15 years ago. I've had them for quite a while. They're glued together. The kids knocked them over and stuff over the years, but I just love them. I think they're very sophisticated looking, and I like that, especially over a fireplace. The other plants that I have up here in the center, this is a Monstera Deliciosa. This was a cutting. I took about 3 cuttings a year and a half ago. And this was the smallest cutting. I didn't think it was going to make it. So I gave the nicer ones that were well rooted to family and friends. And then I kept this one for myself, not knowing if it was really going to do well. But it's doing okay. It's put on a new leaf. I'm probably going to repot this into a richer substrate than what I have right now. It has a lot of moss in it to help those water roots take off. And I think it's done its job. I'm going to repot this into a chunkier substrate to help it out, and I think it will grow better if I do that. But I like it kind of small too. It fits in this space pretty well. The other thing I have here is this is a standard red Anthurium that I recently that I recently propagated. I have a video. I don't know if I posted it at the time. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm going to post it probably the same week that I'm doing this. I showed how to propagate it, as well as what we're trying to do on this one is get it to rebloom, and the growth is starting to come. Then it might take another 4 to 6 weeks before I'm going to start seeing the red leaves come on this one. But yeah, red Anthurium, just one of my many cuttings that we'll see. I love anything that reminds me of the tropics. So palm trees, ferns, things like that. This is a Parlor Palm that came in a funeral arrangement. When my father had passed away, we got a funeral arrangement, and I took and potted that up, and then it grew, and it had tons of palms that really multiplied, and I broke them into smaller pieces. I think this really should be in a little bit more moist environment. I may repot it into a self-watering container, but I don't know when I'm going to do that, or if I'm going to do it at all. The one thing that I've noted about Parlor Palms, if you get them in too bright a light, if you're direct light, it will bleach the leaves, which I started having problems with this one. I thought it was a spider mite problem, but it turns out it was just in too direct a sun. So I pulled it back into this area, and I think it'll do much better. So again, we are still in the family room, west-facing window, pretty bright to diffuse light, depending on if I have the shade open or closed. Here's the other Parlor Palm, and I'll try to do some close-up so you can see the bleaching, like right here. And it's starting to recover. They were all white like this. They were all white, and they started coming back now. And just a common Parlor Palm. Pretty easy to grow as well. I got new growth coming in here too, so pretty excited about that. This is a Foxtail Fern. It's called a Foxtail Fern, but it's really a member of the asparagus family. And I do have regular asparagus ferns too. But see, this one sticks up, it's like a foxtail. This was an outdoor plant that I had in one of my containers. I have 3 of them. I had all 3 of them outside, and my goal was to do just what I'm doing, bringing it in for the winter, to make sure they stay nice and safe, and then I'm going to take them back out. So I got these Foxtail Ferns at Home Depot in the spring, and they were reasonably priced. I think they're only $7, something like that. Can't remember for sure, but Home Depot in the spring is when I got it, and along with the other bedding plants. And I'm going to take these back outside this summer and put them in a container garden. I'm probably going to have some bright pink, or maybe light pink. Probably going to have some pink petunias spilling over the side. I think the combination of the fuchsia and this limey green foxtail fern would probably go really well together. And I just love it. I think it's just amazing. And when they get bigger, they get even more grand than this. And so I will be continuing to use these outside during the summer, and then bringing them in the winter. And I know some people have asked me questions about that. So some of these houseplants for sure you can use for your outdoor arrangements as well. Foxtail Fern. So this concludes section 2 of the great room. I've got one more section to do. I'll set up and we'll be right back. So this is section 3 in the great room. This is my Florida Green Philodendron. I've had this for maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, and it grew like crazy, really fast. And it actually snapped off. I didn't cut this, it snapped off right here. And I have a propagation, I put it in a vase to get some water, but you can see the new growth spike is coming because of that, and it's actually putting out new growth here too. It's actually putting out new growth here too. And actually all the way down is putting out new growth. So that cut actually did a nice job of telling it to propagate itself and to thicken up, which will be great because otherwise it looks a little spindly. So yeah, Philodendron Florida Green. The next group we have over here on the little table is just a little collection, and we're setting up for Easter, so little bunny guys in there. This is my recent purchase, about within the last 30 days. This is a Prince of Orange Philodendron. And you can see that new leaf has got that orange color, which is nice. This is a Bromeliad cutting, or I should say a Bromeliad propagation. It's one of the pups. I'm trying to get it to send up a new flower spike or bract. And this is a newer propagation of my string of hearts. And then another Bromeliad. Again, a more recent purchase. I decided to get a bunch of tropical plants for Easter here. And then I'll continue to do propagations on them, which is kind of nice. Another Bromeliad. This is a Guzmani, or Guzman. Another variety of Bromeliad, and the really cool green and white foliage, and a pink bract on it. The bract wasn't on it when I bought it. It was down in the cone. It's taken 2 weeks for it to merge, which is kind of neat to watch. And this one I bought at Walmart because I like, again, it looks a little bit different. This is a Variegated or Reason. I put the name in the description. And this one I think is called Flaming Sword. So, yeah. So that is my section 3 of my great room on my west facing window. I'll give you a perspective. Okay, I've switched to my kitchen dining area. This is my eat-in kitchen dining room, and I've got I have quite a few of plants in this area. I walk past it constantly. So this is a west facing window, again with filtered light. I have a sheer over the main patio. So the first plant I want to talk about is this Ficus Bonsai. I'm not sure if there's another name for it. It's a standard ficus. It probably could use to be trimmed up a little bit. It's just an itty bitty thing in a self-watering pot, and I really should pot it up into a bigger container. Maybe I'll work on that sometime. Sometime this spring. Maybe I'll do it, or maybe I'll leave it like this because it restricts the growth a little bit, and I'm happy about it staying where it is. But I keep it up on the shelf. I've had this for maybe 2 years. I've had this quite a while, and it stayed pretty small. I haven't done any pruning, but it could definitely use some pruning. Again, Ficus Bonsai. This plant here, which I'm not going to bring down, is a Zebrina. It's a Tradescantia Zebrina, and a lot of people don't like this plant because of you can see what it's doing. This is just a cutting. It's not planted in any kind of potting medium. It's just in a water propagation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take little bits and pieces of this and put it in soil to get it going. I use Tradescantia in my outdoor containers. So again, this is kind of an overwintering hack for me. Because the sun is starting to get higher in the sky, it's really starting to take off on some new growth, but it looks a little spindly because it needs more nutrients than it's getting. So I'll get that done at some point as well. This is a fluffy Ruffles fern, and I love it. I think that this is a newer variety, I believe, and I almost like this one more than the maidenhair fern, which the maidenhair fern is kind of like my all-time favorite, and also a very difficult plant to grow. But I had switched this one out. I probably had less than 6 months. I switched it into one of those self-watering containers to make sure that I can maintain that constant moisture that ferns like to have. So again, I love this one. I did some B-roll so you can see just how delicate the foliage is. Fluffy Ruffle Fern. This is another black velvet Alocasia. You can see this one also has a new leaf coming. Again, the sun's starting to get higher in the sky, and I see all my plants are starting to take off and going into their spring growth spurts. So just like the other one I just went through, I have a little bit of yellowing going on this leaf. And if I've got spider mites, I just hit it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, like a spritz of rubbing alcohol, and it seems to take care of it immediately. This one's a little droopy because it's sad. It needs more water. But this is 2 of 3 of these I have. The bigger one is in my actual kitchen window, but this one's still looking pretty good. I've had this one for over a year. Again, black velvet Alocasia. This is the most expensive plant in my collection. This is an Anthurium Clarinervium, and I just think that the leaf is spectacular. It is just amazing. I just recently repotted this because it was completely root bound. There was like zero soil, all roots. So recently repotted it. It's still getting used to its new location here. Again, less than a month old, but I think it's going to do well. Most of my anthuriums have done well in this location, so hopefully this one doesn't disappoint. Anthurium Clarinervium. This is a brand new plant for me within the last 2 weeks. It's a Crassula watch chain. Like sometimes the bigger variety is called donkey tail, but it's pretty delicate. It is a succulent, and I don't know if it's going to have enough light here. I might have to move it more into the window, but I'm going to try it here for right now. I really like the texture. It's just different. You can see I like touching my plants. I'll put the full name on the screen so you can see. Again, watch chain. This is a Dracena Marginata bicolor. I have a few of these around my house. I like using them in the plant collection. So you can see on this shelf, for example, when I have the different textures and the colors of the foliage, but the texture changes, makes it more appealing to the eye. So when I'm doing my plant collections, I'm just not randomly, for the most part, I am not randomly shoving plants everywhere. I'm trying to vary the variegation so that it's aesthetically pleasing to look at. To me, it's like decorating. It is not just to collect plants. I want it to have a dual or a multi-purpose. So again, the Dracenas tend to be in my collection to give it more of that spiky textural change. And the colors, of course, are wonderful because there's multiple colors on them. So Dracena Marginata bicolor. Lovely plant. Plant is another Dracena. This is Warneckii. Warneckii, I think that's how you say that. And I got it in this little basket. We're getting towards Easter, and I like these little woodland baskets. I'll see if I can link them below if I can find it. I bought it somewhere online. But I just like the woodland appeal. It's got little twigs around it, and then it's got sheet moss into this little basket. Again, the plant, getting sidetracked a little bit. The plant is a Dracena Warneckii. Just like on the other sections, this is another Anthurium, red Anthurium, and our Peacock Anthurium. Propagation, I have probably 5 or 6 of them in the house because I recently split a large plant. And what I'm again trying to do is get the new red leaves to come out. So I probably got another 30 days, maybe 60 days to wait for that to happen. But it should look spectacular. This is a Ficus Pulila. I have another that looks just like this. It was labeled Ficus repens or repens. I think it's the same exact plant. Sometimes they change names. The growers put their own spin on it, or there may be something just a little variation, a little different on it. But my goal is to grow this out big and probably put it in more of a hanging basket and having it sprawl down a little bit. I just think that looks really good. This variegation in the leaf is very delicate. Hopefully I get some good B-roll and you can see that as well. This is just a regular Fittonia. This is white ant. I recently did some propagations with this. It's not looking the best right now. I'm waiting for my propagations, and I'm probably going to pull this out and put it into a bigger pot and get it to fill out a little bit more. Again, Fittonia white ant. I have 4 types of Pothos in my collection. This one is Pearls and Jade. It's got a nice rounded variegated leaf. I've got an Enjoy Pothos. I've got the Golden Pothos we already went through. And I've got a Global Queen, I think. Something like that. And I just love them. And this was a itty bitty plant. It was really small. I think this is still in its original container. And I've had it for a year, and that's all the growth that it put on. So I may end up potting this up into a little bit bigger pot and see if it will take off a little bit better for me. But it was like 3 leaves when I got it. So it's done pretty well. It's probably 10x what it was, or 4x what it was. But again, Pearls and Jade Pothos. This is a cool basket that I got online. So it's kind of a cool basket. If using it for this. This is just a standard variegated spider plant. It's just wonderful. It's super easy. Beginner houseplant people. If you don't have a spider plant, you should get one. Super easy. And maybe if you have a friend or family member that has one, you get some pups off them and start it that way. It's basically free. This is just a standard spider plant. This is a silver dragon alocasia, and I absolutely love it. It has been really good to me. I had some spider mite issues a little while ago. I did a video on that. And I think we're under control now. It's looking much better. This one can take a lot of sun. This one can go right in a west-facing window, and it does quite well. I thought it would burn, but it didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because it's a lighter foliage, but it's just a lovely plant. This back here is just a standard lemon lime Dracaena. This is my mother plant. So if you watch my loft plant video, I had taken, this was like 4 or 5 feet tall a year ago, and I took several cuttings and I just stuck them in a planter with potting medium. Didn't do rooting or anything. Didn't water root them. I just stuck them in, and those took off. That's a different video that is on my loft plant tour. But this is a mother plant, and she is doing fine, and she's recovering. The lesson learned on this one is it takes a long time for that. It took 4 months before the mother plant showed signs of life, as well as the propagations. It took 4 months, so got to be patient with some of this stuff. This is just a common African violet. I had this one actually in my loft. If you watch the loft tour, it was up there, and it started to get leggy. I think it needed more light, so I decided to bring it down here. So again, just a standard African violet. I'm new to African violet, so I'm learning about this plant right now. But it's pretty. The color of the flower is pretty, and when the flower is done and it fades completely, I will propagate this plant and try to get a bunch of these. And I'll be able to put them around my house, which is another reason, if I haven't mentioned already, to do propagations, is because it allows you to give your plants different lighting conditions and humidity conditions, and to see how they thrive. Again, common African violet. This is a lemon button fern. I recently did a video. I don't think I've posted it yet, but there'll be a video coming on how to propagate ferns. And this particular one had 2 little pups that were dangling off it, and so I potted it up. And I'm keeping it together close to these other plants. One thing about when you raise ferns is if you keep them in a collection like this tight with other plants, the humidity level can be controlled by the plants, and it brings additional humidity in, which ferns of course like higher humidity. The other thing I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to repot this in a self-watering container, since ferns really like high moisture or even moisture, to see if I can get it to take off even more. But like I said, it's already given me some pups, so it's kind of fun. On this stand I have tons of begonias, and I recently did a begonia video about propagation. Some of the begonias go dormant in the winter, and then they start coming back. So in some cases I've got one that I thought was dying, but I think it was maybe just going dormant. So now I'm hoping with the sun coming up and getting more light in this room that maybe that one will come back, the escargot. And down here I have just some common plants. This one is just a purple waffle plant, and it's got the nice leaves on the back. This is another waffle plant called Snow White. This is newer to me. I've only had this for maybe 30 days or so. It seems to be doing okay. Sometimes I struggle with waffle plants. I overwater them. And then I go the other way and I underwater. So this can be a tricky plant. I wouldn't suggest this type of plant for a beginner at all. I think it's a little tricky. I probably should take some other propagation so I can have a backup plan, but for right now it seems to be hanging in there. In the middle here, this again is just a baby of the common spider plant. So this is a brand new plant, I think a week maybe. I picked this up at Walmart and I was surprised to see it. This is a Tradescantia. This one is called Baby Bunny Bellies. And I'm telling you, this, if you go to Walmart, you see somewhere and see this, you gotta touch this plant. It is so soft. It's exactly what it feels like, a bunny's belly. That could be a tongue twister, right? So anyway, It's really, really soft. I'm a tactile person. I like touching my plants. Let me know below, do you touch your plants too? You're not supposed to, so I've been told. But I like to do it anyway. I'm a rebel. My next fern here is a rosy maidenhair fern. And it's not the same, it doesn't look anything like a maidenhair fern, but they're calling it rosy maidenhair fern, is what they're calling it. And it's got a nice upright habit to it. I need to do some work on this one. I had some sphagnum moss in there to try to keep the moisture in, and I removed it, and it's starting to dry out a little bit. So I think I'm going to go back into this one, and I am going to add more sphagnum moss on top of the soil to help keep that humidity higher. And maybe I'll pot it into a self-watering container. I'm finding the self-watering containers are saving me a lot of headache. I want to stay with common houseplant items. I don't want to do something and go off the path and do leca or pon, or I don't want anything to do with that. The closest I get is just leaving a plant in a vase with just straight water. But the self-watering pots I like. It helps me to still use potting mixes or potting mediums and still keep the plants well hydrated, especially ferns and the plants that like that. But this one again is rosy maidenhair fern. Just a lovely plant. The last one on this plant tour, the end of my plant tour, this one really grew like crazy. It's really full. I really should break it down and separate it out. I don't think I really want a bigger plant. I want to maintain this pot size. If it gets too big, then I'm going to have too many. Or I won't have room for it to fit in my little arrangement or my little collage. This variety is called Calathea Exotica, and the leaves are really quite beautiful. I really like it a lot. It gives it a little bit more of that lighter green color, which I don't have a lot of in my collection. But this one is a beautiful plant. Again, I'll put some B-roll so you can see it. Again, Calathea Exotica. So I hope you enjoyed the plant tour and got some ideas for your own plant collection. If so, give us a thumbs up so YouTube knows to share this content with others. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.